Thank you for visiting leverageexcel.com. I'm surprised how frequently I'll hear somebody ask, what is a pivot table? Or why would I have to use a pivot table? And I can understand that pivot tables can certainly be intimidating to people who don't often deal with data or have the need to manipulate or summarize large amounts of data. But this doesn't need to be the case. Pivot tables are amazing tools that allow you to summarize your data or view specific cuts of your data. Here we have a small sample pool of HRIS employee data. And to create a pivot table, just put your cursor anywhere inside your data set, select the Insert tab from the top ribbon, and choose Pivot Table. Your data set will automatically be highlighted, so simply select OK. A new tab will be created and a blank pivot table will form. From here, it's as simple as dragging around the different pivot table fields, which correlate to the headers of your data set, and dragging them down into any of the 4 quadrants to build your pivot table. To see the count of employees by location, simply drag location down into the rows quadrant. And then we're going to grab any other element, in this case I'll use employee ID, and drag it down into the values quadrant. Excel recognizes the numbers in our employee ID fields and by default assumes that we want to add them all together, so it's giving us the sum of employee ID. To change this, click on the element we just dropped into the values quadrant and select Value Field Settings. From here, we can choose the type of calculation that we want the pivot table to do with our data. And in this instance, we want a count of our employees and not a sum of their employee ID numbers. So we'll change this to count and click OK. And our pivot table will update to reflect the number of employees in each of these locations. If we want to see average salary by location, we simply drag current salary down into the values quadrant. And again, by default, the pivot table is going to recognize these as numbers and add them together. So we'll go into the value field settings. We'll change this to average this time. And since we know these are currencies, we can go into the number format. And here we have a variety of different formats to apply to our data. So we'll select currency here, OK, and OK. And our table is updated to reflect the count of employees in each location as well as the average salary of those employees in each location. Now I'd like to see this data by job title instead of by location. To delete location, simply drag it off into any of this white space, and then drag job title from your pivot table fields down into the rows quadrant. The pivot table will update to reflect the count of job titles and average salary of those job titles. You can also add multiple rows, so if you wanted to see it by location and job title, simply drag location down into the rows quadrant. In this instance, we have location below job title, so the pivot table reflects that. I'd prefer to see it by location and then job title, so simply drag job title down below location and the pivot table will switch around. So now we've got the count of job titles by location and the average salaries. The important thing to remember with pivot tables is that you're not actually changing any of your raw data. You're only manipulating how it's being summarized. So don't be afraid to play around with your options when building your pivot table because you're not going to break any of your underlying source data. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please like and subscribe. If you'd like a specific video tutorial, please send us a message via the Contact Us page at leverageexcel.com. Thank you. Have a nice day.